Hi, I'm Jude Kiah. I'm Assistant Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs Administration. Today we're going to be talking about bullet journaling, which is a subgroup of plannering, and we are very lucky to have an expert. Marci Walton from Xavier University is with us today, and she has done some spectacular work in the area of bullet journaling that she's going to share with us today.
Hi everyone, I'm Marci Walton. I'm the Associate Director of Residence Life at Xavier University in Cincinnati, Ohio. Today I am super excited to chat with you all about bullet journaling, which is a method of both organization and creative expression.
So we're excited here at TCU to have this sort of intra-school connection. Why don't you tell everybody, both for the Musketeers back at Xavier and for the folks here at TCU, who you are and what you do.
I'm the Associate Director of Residence Life at Xavier University, Xavier in Cincinnati, Ohio. There are a couple Xavier schools throughout the country, which is how I know Jude. We used to work together when he was up in Xavier. And I have always been somebody who has really liked to both be organized and be creative. So I found bullet journaling and have been doing it. It'll be 5 years in September, so almost 5 years total. And I'm really excited to share some of the spreads and some of my do's and don'ts and some of the times where I messed up and wish I would have had somebody saying, here's another way to do that with the TCU and Xavier community.
I remember a few years ago, I came into your office at Xavier and I saw some work that you had been doing in your bullet journal and I was blown away. I'm guessing this is, a reaction you get from a lot of people.
Every now and then, yes, I put a lot of work into my bullet journal. It's something that I really use as a stress reliever, and I think people, in the day and age of apps and cell phones and everything is digital, people are really surprised to see something, done by hand and to have some time put into that. So yeah, people are often surprised by some of the things in my bullet journal.
So during this time where people are inside a lot or have a lot of time to think, why would bullet journaling be a productive or thing for them to get into?
Yeah, absolutely. I think now is a great time because you're not being pulled in all kinds of directions and you have some time to kind of focus. I will also say that the amount of information out there of, movies to watch or podcasts to get into, or, have you seen this series on Netflix, or, that just dropped on Amazon Prime. There's still a lot of things to keep together. And I think especially for college students now, but also kind of when we get back to regular life on campus, there's just a lot to keep track of.
So I think I've seen online that there are some apps that you can use for bullet journaling and plannering. Why would we want to do this in a tactile format rather than using an app?
Sure. So one thing is that we have an app for everything. And by taking this out of the online sphere and putting it down, it makes it special. It makes it unique. It makes it something different to do and to kind of give yourself a break from your phone. But then also, if you are kind of interested more in research and facts on the issue, there's actually a ton of research that says the physical act of writing, not typing, not texting, not DMing, but literally putting pen to paper forms memories in your brain differently.
So a lot of people may not know the difference between plannering and bullet journaling. They're sort of maybe used interchangeably. Before we get into seeing some of this work, maybe you can tell us what the difference is and why you're involved in one and not the other.
So a planner is pre-set for you. So the calendars are set, the to-do lists are set, they are pre-printed. There's a lot on the market right now. So things like a passion planner, Erin Condren, happy planner, there's all different types of planners. But the thing with a bullet journal is that it is a blank journal. And the reason why I have really fallen in love with bullet journaling is, one, I have a very short attention span. Two, my life changes. You know, what I'm doing in the fall is really different than from what I'm doing in the spring. So therefore my needs change. So what I have found in the past years before bullet journaling is that I would get a planner and it would be awesome for like a month or two, but then the semester would change. Right now I'm in grad school, so my classes would change. I'm like, oh my God, I don't like this setup. Forget it. And then I went to texting myself, putting things in my calendar, writing Post-it notes, and then forgetting the Post-it notes. And then I found bullet journaling. And if I need a spread for the week in one way, then I do it like that. And if I need something different for the next week, I just change it. And I'm not tossing out a journal and then trying to find something new. I am creating what I need for myself in the moment, all while being creative, which has been really kind of freeing and liberating for me as well.
Where did all this come from? I hadn't even seen this until the last few years. Where did bullet journaling come from?
Yeah, so very important to note, this is not my idea. I don't own the copyrights. I just love the system. But the guy who founded it, his name is Ryder Carroll. He was a product designer who also has several learning disabilities, which kind of made keeping his life together, both from the project point of view at work, but also just in his personal life, kind of hard. And he kind of went through what I just described. So he was finding a planner and then it didn't work for him, or, you know, a product would change at work that he was working on designing. And they're like, well, this system doesn't work for me at all. So he founded the bullet journal method. A couple of his colleagues were like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Can you teach me more about the system? Then he created a website, and then, you know, the internet got a hold of it. And then people started making it really creative. So you can find out more about the system and his background on bulletjournal.com. And it has really exploded because I think especially people are interested in kind of getting back to basics. And really the system itself, beyond all the bells and whistles and decorations, the system itself really helps people keep their life together.
So I'm excited to show people some of your pages, but before they do, the first thing that I would think when I see some of these pages is, what am I going to need to get involved in this? This is going to be overwhelming to me to have the supply. So what is it that people actually need to get started?
Yeah, so they need a journal. This is my journal for this year. I know we're going to go through some pages later. So you need a journal. If you are, you know, gung-ho, I would encourage you to get a little higher end, maybe better paper quality. But really, if you're like, maybe I'll try this out for a month, you know, go to the Dollar Tree, buy something super cheap on Amazon. You just literally need a journal. You need a pen. This is the pen I'm using now. The Papermate Inkjoy, one of my favorites, but you know, a Bic pen works just fine. And then you need a ruler or even just a straight edge. So the side of a folder, the side of a clipboard, the side of a cereal box. You really only absolutely have to have a journal, a pen, and a ruler. That's it. You can absolutely become more organized, more put together, feel like you are on top of your work, on top of your goals with just those things. And then if you're excited and if you are a creative person, or you like to make things pretty, you can definitely go above and beyond. But a journal, a ruler, and a pen, that's all you need.
Which you can get at just about any dollar store, for God's sake. You could be started for $3 if you want to.
Exactly.
And
That's exactly
certainly
right.
Practice and see if it's something for you for next to nothing.
Exactly.
Well, then let's talk about how you do this. Let's talk about the actual method. And I know you and I have talked about sort of the index and the key and the lock. Can you take us through the method?
Yeah, so the first thing that you're going to want to do is create an index. On some of the journals you can find now, they're sort of pre-printed, ready for bullet journaling. They may already have the first couple of pages, but I would encourage you to have between 2 and 4 pages that you leave as an index. And that is because as you create your journal, you're going to want to remember, where is that page located? where are all the things I want to watch on Netflix during quarantine time? Where are, I'm saving for med school applications? Where are all of those different types of saving locations? What page is that on? So you're going to want to leave a couple of pages for an index. The next thing that you're going to want to have, and this again kind of depends on you. I personally don't use a key or a legend, but a lot of people do. So some people will like to say, all right, if there's a $ next to the task, I know that's financial. I have one friend who works out on a regular basis, and she creates tiny little barbells. So she knows if there's a little barbell, that is something, health related. And maybe you want to have a circle for anything associated with academics, or maybe that wants to be a triangle. There are all different types of options, and what's great is that you make the system work for you. So if you're listening to me and you're like, I'm not drawing all those little symbols, great. It is your journal. You do not have to create those. Other people also like to color code. So I know a couple of people, everything in purple, is related to academics. Everything in green is related to financial. Everything in pink is related to kind of like my social life. So it really depends on what type of system that you want, or it's your journal. You don't have to have that system at all. My very first journal, I did have a key because I'm like, I'm doing it right. I'm doing it exactly the way that the founder says so. And then in the next year, I'm like, I'm just using dots and X's, so I'm not going to waste a page on a key.
Okay, so let's start to talk about these collections. We've got a lot to look at. So why don't you talk a little bit, start with the future log, and let's work from there.
Yeah, so I think one of the foundational principles of bullet journaling, which is kind of hard to conceptualize, is that you're writing things down in multiple places. And people are often like, well, is it super efficient if I'm writing it down more than one time? And the answer is yes, because again, we go back to kind of what I talked to you before. The more that you physically write things down, the more likely you are to remember them, and actually the more motivated you are to complete those tasks. So what you want to do after your key or your legend or your index is set up a future log. A future log, and again, it kind of depends on your life. The minimum amount would be a 3-month span of time. So planning out 3 months, big picture stuff. I tend to do 6 months at a time, and then I'll do 6 months, and then the next page will be 6 additional months, so I have a yearly view. And these are really big events. It's not the nitty-gritty of like, oh, do laundry. You're not going to care about that in a month. These are big events or big due dates. So I will put major projects for classes. Maybe not, I'm not going to put in every single reading, but I'm putting in, my major research paper, which I still have not worked on. Don't tell my professors, it's been rough. But big projects, big major life celebrations. So, spring break, or I am going home for Easter, or, this is the last day of finals, or this is when I'm coming back to TCU or to Xavier for the fall. This is when somebody's getting married. This is a bridal shower. This is a bachelor party. Really those big picture things that you want to know, wait a second, is she getting married on the 14th or the 15th? Oh, real quick, let's go back to the future log. So you're writing down big major events in the future log, not nitty gritty, but big things that you kind of want to keep in mind that you want to have handy.
Okay, so these collections, I've seen them, they're tremendous, and I know that some of them sort of punch your ticket more than others. Can you talk about some of the ones that you really enjoy doing and get the most out of?
Yeah, so collections are basically anything that doesn't fit into the standard kind of flow of bullet journaling. So we go from the future log, which is big picture. The next piece that we go into is a monthly view. It's also called a calendex because it's a calendar on one side and then an index of things you need to do on the other. And then you go to weekly logs, which is basically what's going on a weekly point of view. And then you get to collections. So I kind of got into bullet journaling for the to-do list aspect. Like, I had Post-it notes all over my life. I could never remember where I put what and where. But the collections are really what keep me motivated. So I know for me, I'm getting recommendations from friends right and left of things to, movies to watch or TV series to check out. So that I think is a really good example of a collection. It doesn't fit in a to-do list, right? Like I'm not going to be like on Tuesday, I am watching, Veep from start to finish. But also, I don't want to forget that somebody recommended me to watch this great series on HBO. So a collection could be something as simple as, TV shows and movies to watch, all the way to meal planning or meal prep. I have also done several spreads for finances. I think about 2 years ago, I was like, all right, my car probably has a year, maybe 2 years, if I'm being generous. I should really start planning to save for a down payment now. So I made this cute little, trail, and each little block was $100. So every time I threw $100 in a savings account, I got to color in that block. And I know it sounds childish, but it is motivational when you're like, yeah, look at how much you've already saved. You can save the rest. And this previous Thanksgiving, I bought a new car. And I know if I would have put it off and be like, oh yes, you do need to save for the car. But if it wasn't in my bullet journal, once a month, I was like, dump money in that car fund, I wouldn't have done it.
And some of the ones that I've seen you do, meal planning, packing lists. Why don't you talk to us about some of those?
Oh my gosh, my packing list is my all-time favorite spread, probably of all time. I have now done it 3 times because I did it 3 years ago and then have since kept it. And the reason for that is I'm about 3 hours from my family at home, so enough that I'm not just going to pop by for dinner, so it usually is a weekend trip. And then I also travel a fair bit to see friends and family, as well as for my job for conferences. And I was getting so sick of thinking, all right, what do you need to pack for this trip? What is the weather going to be? Are you going home? Are you presenting? Do you need, your work stuff? So I made a master packing list. And when I say that, I mean it is any possible thing I could need for any type of trip. So when I am going on a trip, I just open that spread on my bullet journal and I'm like, okay, it is warm weather. I don't need mittens. I don't need my hat. I don't need my parka, but I do need my flip-flops and my sunscreen and my cover-up. So that has been a great way to save a lot of time and frankly, help take my anxiety down when I'm planning for a trip of like, listen, you're not going to forget something because every possible thing you could need is on this spread.
I know when you do this and you try some things out, I'm guessing there's ones that punch your ticket a little bit more than others. What are some examples of ones that you did once and you're just not going to do again?
Yeah, I think for me, right when I started, I was like really into it. And I kind of go in waves. There'll be months where I'm really focused, and then others where I kind of just use it a couple of minutes a day for kind of the necessities. So a couple of times I have done kind of like miniature daily goals, and then I track it over a month. So like January goals, and then on one side it will be things like, make sure you talk to a friend at least once a day, get your water intake, get your step count, be in the office at the time you're supposed to be in the office, don't be late. I did that for probably 2 years. And it was actually really cool to see trends. So like I was doing really well at like no screens after I think 11 o'clock was my goal, but I was terrible at water intake. So that really helped me focus in the next month. Okay, this month you are focusing on water intake. Maybe you need to set an alarm, or maybe it needs to be a daily goal or something, but really focusing. And then that got a little too tedious for me. I started up with grad school. I was having a lot more tasks on my plate at work. So I kind of did away with that. And I don't feel guilty about that. My life has changed. My needs have changed. Maybe I'll go back to it. That's the thing about the bullet journal. The next page is blank. So if I wanted to start, an April daily goal checklist, that is what I would do.
So, I have seen, tremendous work, and that has taken you tremendous amount of time. And I can imagine that you get 3/4 of the way into doing one of these and you all of a sudden make some kind of error, some kind of mistake. And I would be mortified to have put all that time into. So what do you do? What do you do with these mistakes? And how do you handle that sort of mentally or emotionally?
Yeah, well, when I started, I wanted everything to be, I call it Pinterest perfect. So I had a journal where you could rip out pages and then put a new page in and nobody would know any different. So I started doing that. And then one day, I think I had done a spread like 5 times and said to myself, this is the opposite of what you want to do. You are being way too much of a perfectionist. So I got a new journal the next year when I was ready to start a new one. And it's actually really helped me with my perfectionism. So I kind of tell people there are kind of 4 ways to deal with mistakes. The one I use most often is that I just deal with it. I'm like, okay, well, I made a mistake, not a huge deal. Another way, if everything else is looking awesome and it will really bug you, using things like stickers or washi tape or maybe a fun decoration around the issue can be an easy way to deal with it. You can also kind of realize, this is not a museum piece, but you can, what I have done is I take the last page of my journal because I've never made it all the way through a full one. And you can use that as a patch. So like you can cut a little piece and then glue it on because it's the same paper and the same texture and you really can't tell. And then if you really can't deal with it and you're like, this is a total wash, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, you can just glue it together, glue those pages together, move on. Nobody has to be the wiser for it.
You probably get better as time goes on. And you get better and better at these things. So you're going to make probably more errors when you first start doing it. And as you get better, is that true?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm at the point where I want this to be efficient and I want this to help my life and decrease my stress levels. So the first year that I started, I did every single spread in pencil first. And then I would go over it in pen to make it perfect. I couldn't tell you where a pencil is in my house to save my life. I just go straight to pen. And if I make a mistake, I either deal with it, I make a patch, I find a cute sticker to put over it. Sometimes I'll draw like, oops, or clearly wasn't paying attention here. Or, I've made calendars before and like have forgotten a day and be like, well, Wednesday's canceled. Wednesday doesn't exist anymore, and kind of laugh about it. And again, worst case scenario, just glue it together and move on.
I can tell that, looking at some of your spreads, that you're using more than just the basic materials. And I'm sure that as you've gained an affinity for doing this, you've found some places to go and get some more advanced supplies. So where are some of the places that you like to go get those things? Where can people go find those kinds of things? And what would you say would be a good thing to invest in?
Yeah, so I would say that if you are watching this or if you've done your research and you're like, Marci, I'm in, I'm going to do this, I'm committing, I would rather you spend your money on a good journal than a whole bunch of like fun stickers or markers or washi tape. Because at the end of the day, the journal is what you are going to be kind of dealing with. So I've bought my last 4 on Amazon. We'll include some links on different types of journals. But the biggest thing that I recommend is definitely getting a journal that is a dot grid. So some people, you'll see journals with lines in them, which is great if you're just doing to-do lists. But if you want to do anything creative, just imagine, a huge picture of something with lines through it. It's not super cute. On the other side, if you get a totally blank journal and you want to do something that has straight lines, that has a grid, that has a chart, that's going to be much harder for you to create. So the dot grid is a nice happy medium. I have gotten all of my journals either from Michael's craft store or from Amazon. I also have a couple of pens and markers that I love to use. I have usually gotten those from Michael's or Joann Fabrics. So things like micron pens, Tombow markers, mild liners. Again, all of this, none of this is necessary. This is all, cherry on top kind of things. But if you are interested in kind of really getting into it, so micron pens are kind of artist quality, archival ink. They don't really soak through. And they are permanent and they are really fine tip, which is great. Tombow markers actually come in a pack that looks like this. So they have two different ends. They have a fine, kind of almost like a fine tip marker. And then the other side is how you can do faux calligraphy, which is pretty cool. Mild liners, so these are highlighters, but in like way better colors that just make things look really cool. And then also we have, these are just some examples of washi tape. So washi tape originated in Japan in Japanese stationery stores, originally made from rice paper, and they're just colorful tapes. They come in all different shapes, sizes. You can see these are super skinny, different widths, and they can really jazz up a spread.
And when I look at these spreads and I look at your work and the colors and all the things that you do, the thing I think about is the amount of time that you spend on this. What kind of time do you think a beginner or even an intermediate might be spending on doing the bullet journaling?
In a normal world, we're not in a normal space right now, I would come into the office, I would put my bullet journal down, I would kind of look to see what I accomplished the day before, and migrate things if they were not accomplished. And that takes minutes, right? And then if something would pop up in my head, I was like, oh, don't forget to pick up your dry cleaning, write it down, seconds. So on the daily, it literally is minutes. On the monthly, it's usually about an hour or two for me. So I go month by month. That's not how some people do it. That's how I like to do it. So I will set up the monthly calendex. I'm working on May right now. So I will set up the May calendar on one side, to-do list on the other, and then 4 weeks of weekly spreads. That takes maybe an hour or two. I'm actually in my craft room right now, so I will put something good on Netflix, spend maybe an hour or two on that, and then be done with it for the month. And then the collections, I'm not gonna lie, the collections setting those up do take more time, but usually I do over the Christmas holiday, New Year holiday. I'm always required to be in Cincinnati at least for a week while I'm on duty. But there's like no students and I don't have to work. So I will spend maybe 1 or 2 half days setting those up for a couple of hours, and then I'm done for the year.
And the time you're spending is less, it's an investment in yourself. I mean, you're spending time just like you would in any other endeavor that gives you something back. It's not just something doing the dishes, I have to do this. You're literally getting something back out of it. Mm-hmm. So what that leads me to is remembering the first time I saw it was kind of just out on your desk, and I said, what is that? And then, immediately it entered my mind, that you put so much time and effort into that it may not be something that you share with others. So is this something that you do share with other people?
Yeah, I would say I'm really proud of it. I think it's something cool and unique. It's a hobby that really helps you in your life, which I don't think you can say that for all hobbies. So I'm really proud of my work. I like to show it off. But there are definitely some spreads where I will keep paper clips. So if somebody is slipping through, just go past those paper clip pages. Some things for a couple of years, I tracked every single thing that I spent. I'm like, do I need people knowing what I spent on craft supplies or on delivery food? Maybe not, or on my dogs. But then other things like I have wild dreams, so I keep a dream journal, and I'm like, I don't necessarily want people reading the crazy dreams that I have about wild things. So there are definitely things that I choose to keep private, but I think it's cool for people to share in your excitement and to share in your passions. And by sharing in your passions, it leads to cool opportunities like this. I've been able to do several workshops in my local area to kind of spread the bullet journal love, and nobody would know that if I wasn't kind of willing to share that interest with them.
One of my favorites of yours that has a sort of a help to the person looking and to you is the mood page, where you color sort of your mood on that day, every day for a year. And then you can sort of look back at that and see patterns, both in terms of weeks or parts of the year. And then overall, kind of, are you a bright and shiny person, or are you generally have a cloud over your head? Do you get the same thing out of that kind of longitudinal effort?
Yeah, absolutely. So something I haven't really touched on, which is super helpful, is the health side, both kind of physical health, but also mental and emotional health. So you will see spreads all over the place online of people tracking different health symptoms. So like I have a friend who has migraines, and she's like, oh my God, this month was terrible. I had a migraine every day. And then she's like, wait a second, maybe it just felt that way. And she will go back and look and be like, oh no, I had 3 really terrible days in the past week, but this month actually wasn't terrible.
So as you've gotten into this, I'm sure you started by looking at some other people's work and getting some inspiration. And do you mentor others in the same way? Do you take some time to get people going?
Yeah, I would say, again, by sharing some of the things I'm excited about, I've been able to do several workshops for the Ohio State University. They're very particular about that. From the University of Cincinnati, from a couple of different libraries in my neighborhood. So I've been able to, kind of share that. And then also, there's a huge and wonderful community online. There are tons and tons and tons of Facebook pages. Bullet journal for beginners, minimalist bullet journalists, all kinds of things on Instagram, on Pinterest. So there really is a supportive community. Everything from just, I just kind of want to see what other people are doing, all the way to, hey folks, I actually did this. I'm like, I'm getting a puppy. What are some things that you would encourage me to think of, to track? And then people were posting, well, I had a puppy last year. I had a puppy 2 years ago. Here are pictures of my spreads, to really help people not kind of feel like, oh, I want to track this, but I have no idea how to do that or what would be helpful. So there's a lot of kind of cross mentorship and helping people out in those digital spaces.
So you've done a great job of sort of giving people the opportunity to engage this where they are, how they are, a lot of do's. So why don't you give us a few don'ts? What are some potential pitfalls that you can give some folks as they start out doing this?
There's a couple of things. One, don't go out and spend your last paycheck on supplies. So start small. Get a good journal that you like and will use. Get a straight edge, and then if you're feeling fancy, maybe start with several colors of pens. But don't go out and buy all kinds of stuff until you really get the system right. You get your future log, and then your monthly log, and then your weeklies. And then you start migrating tasks. I would also say try it out for at least 30 days. They say it takes about 30 days to create a habit. So really try it for a month before you kind of give up on it. I have had people say, well, I tried it for 3 days and I don't feel any more productive. Like, well, maybe try it for a little longer than 3 days. I would also warn people to not go too deeply into the internet to find inspiration, because there are true artists. I mean, people that take out their watercolors and paint in their bullet journal like around the calendar for the month. Because I know I feel super intimidated and like, well, the stuff I just did is never going to look like that. So making sure that you are seeking out appropriate inspiration, I think would be another tip.
I would think that for me, if I did one that and it didn't come out exactly the way I wanted to, might be discouraging to do it again. Probably want to just move on to another. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I think so. So I think when you're starting out, it can be easy to get frustrated. I encourage people to not do a spread more than once. So if you are constantly redoing what your monthly log looks like, you are spending more time trying to be perfect than you are trying to be productive. And the goal of bullet journaling is productivity. So you feel organized and clear-minded, and you have a goal for the next day, and you're not thinking about, oh my God, that flower that I drew looks terrible, I'm just gonna rip it out, or throw my journal in the corner for the week, because that doesn't help you be productive. So really focusing on that rather than being perfect.
This is a great time for this, Marci. It's a great time for people to get ready for what's coming in the fall and create these habits that may bring them lifelong investment, pleasure, fulfillment, all from just this self-expression that you've really found some of that yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. You've done a great job with us today, and thank you for sharing all of this with us. And I know that the folks back at Xavier, you're going to get a lot of feedback from people wanting to see your books there, and all these great spreads that we've been able to show everybody. Really appreciate your time. It's great to see you and work with you again, and I hope that everybody enjoys it.
I definitely know it's been a game changer for me, especially starting grad school. So best of luck. Don't get overwhelmed. Go slow, and give yourself grace, because it really can be a huge game changer for kind of how you're feeling and how you're productive in your life, as well as in your schoolwork.
Well, I think it's just a matter of picking up a pen and starting, even if you're not, like you said, super artistic. So hopefully everybody that's watching will give it a chance and go back and take a look at some of the examples that you've provided for some inspiration. So
Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
yes, thank
I really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you. It's great to see you.